Thank you all for those beautiful, beautiful talks and mildly successful and otherwise. I've prepared a few questions, but it'll be wonderful to have engagement from the audience. I mean, I'm looking around and I know some of the questions that I have. There's other SSN grant holders. I know Rangam is here. Luke, there's people who've got ideas and things to add. And I thought, Peter, it would be wonderful to hear from your own personal experiences, but also, where appropriate, an institutional response to some of the questions I have. The first one, Ben's talk, you really got me thinking about production. And you use this metaphor, about producing a project. And I think it's such an interesting way of thinking about putting a team together. So you have a vision and you're building this thing. And I thought that, producing something was a great metaphor or way of thinking about, building this team. So I have a question about how putting your teams together. And I guess for you, I'm interested in what your production experience tells you about that. I'm curious about Baha and Kaja's experiences of doing that in terms of mentoring. I think it's wonderful, the PhD focus in your talk, for example, Kaja, but also would love to hear more about HUTech. And then I'm curious about an institutional method to make that environment to enable the production of these things. So thanks, Ben. You want to go?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. I was really struck by Natalie's description or narrative about your research, because it copies or it mirrors a lot of what happens when I do stuff, which is that it's a discovery process. Like, as I said, you don't necessarily know what you're making until it's made. But that's actually the point. Because if you did, then you wouldn't be making something that's suited to the context of its application. And I think beyond that, a lot of the questions around collaboration are founded in ethics, and the ethics of access, the ethics of the right to speak about something, not only for playing. Honouring, the need for us to practice ethical research, but because it actually founds your core understandings within a proper grasp of the knowledge that you're dealing with. So making sure that you're not sort of brushing across those things. So, but beyond that, a lot of it is like 30 years of collaborating, learning to hold my tongue and not be emotional, and all of those really like human skills. Like, there's a huge amount of just like I've lost a lot of tread on the tire through the process of 30 years of doing this, and learnt to be much smoother in the way that I work.
So those who came early to the workshop that we were running heard how Bahareh and I actually met. Maybe I tell story from my part, from my side. We actually met and discussed what each of us do. And me, being a designer who has a background in museum studies and doing virtual reality, we've always been designing VR and then measuring with very traditional ways how to measure success. So we would evaluate our users by interviews, by observing them, and also maybe they do some survey. And it's great to hear where technology is going, and that we got such experts here at Deakin, like Bahareh and her team, to help us understand how we measure some things in a more objective way, in a different way. And this is how our first minute of conversation started. I said, we got some projects. Can you figure out, are we good, or are we doing well or not? And that's one example where we can merge these technologies together. So it's maybe just telling a story, telling each other what kind of problems do you have, and then they will come to you. And it's really exciting to work, and we learn a lot. We have different communication style. We got different terminology, and we learn from each other. And I'll give it to Bahareh to comment that.
So maybe to add to what Kaja mentioned, so essentially I'm coming from the background of IT. So to work in IT, you have to learn how to work with other people, because you are trying to apply your knowledge and translate it to a way that people can use it, right? So the first instance when I saw Kaja, that she's a designer and working around immersive technology, I said, all right, that's a good, experiment for me to find out how I can work with other people from other disciplines. But she was coming out, with a problem of, so we are always working on a subjective assessment, but we are relying on the subjective assessment and how we can make it more automated. And then we start talking around what we see as an, IT expert, that how we can measure, let's say, if we are talking about the emotional state, so how we can measure these objectively through the physiological signal or through the human body data. So we try to put the problem together, and then looking at from different lenses, from different angle. She was talking from the design side. I was thinking about that, how we can measure it and how we can track it. And when we put these ideas together, we came up with a project that we can apply it not only to, maybe from her presentation, you have seen that we are working around the space areas, but then we expanded to the healthcare, to the sport, and also to some other, areas in food science, working with the other disciplines, other universities, and then we expanded our collaboration to the other universities across the globe.
So I might just speak from an institutional perspective around how it is that we bring teams together and try and encourage some of this research. We are not in the research office. We're not about telling researchers what to research. We very much trust that that's their expertise, and our job is twofold. First of which is there's a compliance and regulatory aspect to make sure that we as a university are doing the right things. But the other far more fun part is to actually provide an enabling environment for research to occur at the highest levels. And so from a multidisciplinary perspective, our role there, I think, is to remove the barriers to that. And I think that there's a lot of, somewhat perverse behaviours that have been rewarded over the years that have kept people in their lane, in their discipline. And so there's a lot of work going on at the moment around the research groupings, when you think about institutes and initiatives and SRCs, about trying to take some of that away so that people are incentivised and encouraged to work across disciplinary boundaries. There's other approaches that we're taking in terms of providing the incentives and actually putting money behind it, as the SSN has done. And without being too cynical, that's really necessary. Research costs money, and so we can actually put forward initiatives, projects, schemes to bring people together. I think the other thing that I've been at Deakin 12 years now, and primarily largely in the Faculty of Health, and now in the Research and Innovation portfolio, you get to know a lot of people across the institution. So I think for those of us that have been around for a while, we can sometimes see those synergies in front of us that the different people that could be brought together won't necessarily seen because they're not aware of one another. So I think that's another part, whether it's as a PVC or an Associate Dean Research, the people that can actually see where there might be opportunities to bring people together. And it's not, as Christina mentioned earlier, it's not just, bring a couple of faculties, put them in a room, but where you can actually see that there are commonalities in terms of, the questions that people might be working on and the approaches that they're taking. We can facilitate some of those connections as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, the SSN, where's Vicky? Vicky's a wonderful example of someone who met her interdisciplinary collaborators during an SSN speed dating matchmaking session, which is also something that we found to be enormously useful. But it's also really beautiful to hear about these other much more organic unfolding institutions or like relationships. So my next question, I mean, I was just thinking as everyone was presenting today, the previous session and this session, which is that you've all done a really remarkable job of translating really complicated stories and projects and visions into something that all of us in this room, and I know our online audience, could really understand and engage with and follow along with. And I mean, I think I'm quite confident making the argument that I think you were all good at that, maybe because you're interdisciplinary researchers. Because one thing that we hear repeatedly in our work in progress sessions is that what interdisciplinary researchers have to do is translate their own work to their teams and get that feedback from their teams all the time. So a lot of interdisciplinary work is making yourself understood and understanding others' work. So there's a level of storytelling, right, that makes for people being more reflexive is something we often hear people say. So my question is about that translation and communication within your teams. And I think in the university space, this is also one of our jargon and disciplines and how we fit into, like the policies and the spaces. So yeah, I'm curious about the processes of communication, what you've learned, what's unfolded, how that translation has happened. Some projects, we see that maybe there's one very clear leader, others are much more pulled in different directions by different people. So as part of unboxing the interdisciplinarity, if you could share your experiences of those within your teams.
So I think the crux of interdisciplinarity or transdisciplinarity for me, I think, is what Brett was saying is more true because it's participatory as well. Is stories are the shared medium for sense making for groups of diverse expertise. In the adaptation game, it also uses place, and so you can gather around place, and from whichever seat you sit in, whatever pole you are orientated around, you can contribute and also receive knowledge in a way that makes sense to you, that fits within your needs. But in a sense, we call that kind of mapping story mapping. So it becomes a process of place making together. But I find it actually really significant that storytelling has that characteristic and and can do that work, because it's allowed me to form a relationship with research that's remarkably self-directed, in which I'm able to construct strategic partnerships that include universities and community and funding by telling a story around something that we're doing or creating together. And so in a sense, I almost feel like story is the container of that kind of work. And, I'm looking forward to researching that much more deeply over the coming years and understanding how that works better. But story as knowledge is sort of, like a headline.
Maybe from my perspective, I can comment on, if you want to work in the multidisciplinary area, you should have a mindset of looking at the problem from a bigger picture, out of the box. Because I know I used to work in industry. Before joining Deakin, I worked as an AI scientist in industries, collaborating with Microsoft. But this is maybe the mindset that I learned in industry, that you have to go and talk to customer and clients and convince them to and provide them with a solution, right? So you should be a good listener first, and then you have to step back and look at the bigger picture, that what is the problem that they are trying to solve, and then what are the elements that you can put together to solve that problem. So if you do have that mindset, you don't care about your research that much. You will care about the project. First of all, what's the problem that you are trying to solve together? And then what are the skill set that you have that you can put in as a kind of like a puzzle together to solve that problem? So like what Ben said, storytelling. So he's really a good storyteller because he could put all of these, elements of different research together and then come up with a story that can be understandable to everyone. So I think this is a kind of like a mindset that we have to nurture. It doesn't mean that if you are doing some research, it has to work only on your side, and you have to talk to your community. You have to go to your conferences that they understand you. So sometimes it's not a bad idea to get out of your comfort zone and then talk to others that they don't understand you. They may like you or they may hate you, right? So it's worth trying, I would say. But then if it works, then you will come up with a better and bigger picture and better projects, and you will have more opportunities to explore, I believe.
Yeah. If I relate further, I think it's also important, yes, finding people who are different from you and not being afraid that you're learning, because we're all learning, and we will continue to learn. And especially when new technologies are coming, I think it's really important to explore them from different perspectives and then go back and think about how we can engage with not only other researchers from different disciplines, but from, let's say, industry. And industry is not just in engineering, we always think about manufacturing, but industry could be museums, industry could be tourism organizations, even local governments, everyone related to that. I think this big ecosystem, I think it's really important, and we are having more and more wicked problems that we'll not be able to solve. But what I want to point out also is I'm not really sure I'm already be able to work in transdisciplinary, because I think that's the next step, and this is where we're all going. But I really believe that on a PhD level and maybe postdoc level, I think it's important to learn interdisciplinarity, to get more people engaged with this type of research, because I think it's important for the society as a whole to build more interdisciplinary research to be able to then continue and work on transdisciplinary projects. So I think it's continuation, but we need to do it with respect, with learning, and otherwise it's just too difficult to solve wicked problem these days on our own.
So thinking about communication and, getting back to the notion of our social license and how we can rebuild that within the university, I think something that we've not done particularly well is told stories about our research. And, it gets back to research impact fundamentally. I think we're getting better and better at going out to our communities, to outside of the academy, to end users, to patient groups, whoever it is, and co-designing research, hearing about what problems would they like solved within their area, whether it's a corporation, whether it's a particular health condition. I think we're really good in the universities at looking at numbers and talking about how many papers we got published and how much money we brought in and that sort of stuff. What we haven't done as well, I think, at Deakin is catalogue those stories and work towards how we can actually how we can tell those stories, but how we can enable our researchers to I guess be thinking about what comes at the end. What are those impacts, those narratives that can come out. So I've recently just convened a research impact and engagement working group to actually develop a framework for the university, which we haven't had. And I think that's been a big deficit of ours, and I'm really keen for us to move towards how we can better tell those impact stories. And I actually think that will help transdisciplinarity, both in terms of us being able to work with other researchers, but certainly work outside of the university, which is, we make a lot of noise at Deakin about being a university that works really well with industry, works well with the community, but I think we've got a bit of a way to go in terms of really living that to the full extent.
Does the audience have, yes, we've got questions, right? Emma, if you can bring the mic over here to the front and then to Luke. And please remember to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kim Gordon. I'm actually a new staff member at Deakin. in R&I. I'm the engagement coordinator with the Researcher Development Academy. This is one of my colleagues. So I have, like, firstly, it's been incredibly inspiring to hear all your stories, and I'm just blown away by it all. And I guess I just sort of want to sort of make a comment and also have an ask for you. So, you know, as I've been learning about Deakin and this sort of research ecosystem, you know, one of the jobs of the Research Development Academy is to sort of build this competence. And one of the focuses, of course, is on graduate researchers. So, you know, the work you're doing and, you know, this strategy around interdisciplinarity, it's actually finding some incredible expression at the moment in the 3-minute thesis and visualise your thesis competition. So I guess, you know, firstly, I would love to just, like, have videos of everything, you know, all the things you've said, because it's so inspiring, I think, at so many different levels. But also, can I urge you to spread the word and come as well and hear the latest research communication, which is, you know, about the storytelling and these emerging researchers. So it's on the 12th of August at The Edge in Fed Square. So I really urge particularly this group to come along, because I think it really speaks to what you're doing on so many levels. So thank you again.
Go to Luke. I don't know if we have any responses to that, but I will also say, you know, like the AusSTS, you know, Science and Technology Studies, sorry.
Bahar and I, we sent one student.
Yeah, good. But, you know, it's just, we have a model at our conference of making and doing. So we also get people to present in non-traditional formats at our conference, which includes, you know, visual storytelling, all different alternative forms, which is really fun. And we're hopefully going to start seeing that move into different kinds of conference spaces. Luke had a question.
Thank you, Luke Heemsbergen, CCA here at Deakin. And each presentation was just so wonderful. So thank you so much. I hadn't seen that research before. And I guess I have a pitch as well, you know, come to this thing. I urge you, or can you think about, I was thinking about the comment around interdisciplinarity or transdisciplinarity and how we sit. And it sounds like Kaja and Bahareh, you're there, but it just struck me, between your 3 pillars of work, if you will, how each could be influenced by the other in new ways. So, like, would you go to a workshop where, for instance, Ben and Bahareh, you know, you developed a game around adapting AI to the alignment problems that we have, right? Or, you know, Ben and Kaja, how does narrative resolution enter into the work, right? Like the physiological response to some of the narratives that you could discuss, and the, you know, maybe we're thinking about trustful agents in those VR spaces to create heritage, right? There just seemed, I don't know, there seemed like there was such opportunity for each of your work to come together in new ways, that it was just a beautiful picture of what SSN tries to do. And I was just, so thank you for each of your individual presentations, and, like, please keep doing that work, because I was just looking between you and I thought that'd be wonderful. So that's it. That's my comment question. Do it.
But I can comment on that. We are already working together. Maybe the work that Kaja presented today was mainly towards the design side of the work, because we couldn't cover everything in one, you know, presentation. But what she has presented was mainly towards from the design perspective and developing those immersive experiences. But other way around, we are developing those AI models that can objectively measure how you are responding to those content. So whether you are, because the purpose of those content is essentially to find out whether we can, you know, transfer the negative, you know, emotional states to the positive emotional states. But, you know, emotion is very complex cues. So if you are asking the subject, what did you experience? It's quite challenging for them. And especially when it goes, for example, to patients, they might not be able to respond. So the best way is to use those physiological signals, for example, that can objectively measure what they felt, and then we can, you know, assess and evaluate whether the content that are created by their group, whether are valid to be utilized or not. Of course, you know, this is a research. We can't commercialize it. We wish we could commercialize it, but it's really challenging, you know, problem. And it requires a diverse, you know, cohort coming from different culture with different background, and it requires a massive data that we can validate. But of course, we can, pass to the community that what works, what not, didn't work.
I'm not allowed to do anything else until I finish my PhD. But that's like, I'm not very good at not doing anything else. So, but maybe not for the next 4 months. But yes, absolutely, I agree. I think there's there were things that I was thinking and listening to both of you talk where I was like specifically one example would be the adaptation games, people around a table playing a game. It'd be so interesting to put AI on that table and play with AI. Like that'd be really fascinating, and just sort of to start to train. We're sort of training AI at the other end, but actually training AI as a player, as an agent would be fascinating. But yes.
That's what we are doing as well.
So we're not allowed to, but yes.
Any more questions or things to add? I'm going to just have one final question, or one more to raise, which is just something else that we see over and over again at the SSN, which is the question of time. So our grant holders get funding for a year, and we try and save them time by making it a very simple process. I hope you all remember how hopefully easy it was, because we know that grant applications are difficult. There's often a high investment, and we know with really small chances. So we try and make it simple. We try not to use a lot of your time, because we know that time is the one resource that is extra scarce in interdisciplinary teams, because you're doing your own work and you're learning about work and you're thinking about all these things together. So I think it's really, really challenging in the higher education environment where there's so much time pressure, and, the current systems are built, biased towards less collaborative work. So I'm curious about your approaches to time management at a philosophical or a practical level within your projects. And I mean, I know that there's other grant holders in this room who've had, our return of investment of over 8-1, is an amazing ratio, but that really emerges over time. So often interdisciplinary projects take a few years to come to fruition, as many others do, but there seems to be an extra element. And then, of course, an institutional response to how we accommodate the extra time needs, all the time of translation. We'd all love to know.
For me, I am like the last person you want to ask this question of. I do it with just a sort of a sacrificial process of me, and do a lot of charming excuses in meetings. That works, but I think it sort of. My own approach to this has been quite different, because I came from a professional career in filmmaking and TV making and stuff, and so I was stepping away and stopping that career to do something in this context. And so I was very driven by impact, very, 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 very focused on impact. And so the balance in time has been between the research and the application of the research, and that's just been a constant dance between 32 councils have implemented TAG. That means that I've spent 32 councils amount of time working with that amazing team, not doing my PhD. I mean, don't tell anyone, but don't tell Brett. Brett's gone's great. But I think that's okay. I think that's actually a really healthy tension between impact and learning by application, and then coming back and research. And I've enjoyed that.
So maybe I can tell that essentially time doesn't matter for us, to be honest. We are here working 24/7 without any time limitation, because you have to sacrifice something to gain more. But then it doesn't mean that you have to keep, allocating your times. Initially, maybe it's a hard discussion that you have to go through and talk to the other people that you haven't, been able to work with them. So talking to them about what you are doing, what they are doing, what are the challenges that you are all going through. And then once it's settled, then you will have more time to spend on the other thing. But it's, to be honest, whenever you come back, to the academic and asking about time, I don't understand. I have no understanding of how we have to balance our time, because it's all about the, I think, how did you get inspired to do those work? So you have to sacrifice your time, and then at the end you will gain better projects. So what you are interested in doing, so it will be, I think, the part that you make you satisfied.
Okay, I'm another bad example of time. I'm currently on long service leave, but I'm enjoying so much here. No, what I learned through all these years is just don't go against the wall. And that's specifically in terms of interdisciplinary research and anything related to other people and other collaborators. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I think as people will come to you, you will come to people. My most important measure to myself is this rewarding? If it's rewarding to me, it's most likely will be rewarding to people around. I think it's around energy, and I think it's really important that we enjoy what we do. It's really hard to manage our time. I'm not going to talk about teaching and learning. I'm not going to talk about ethics. I'm not going to talk about human participant recruitment or any of things like that. But it's so much rewarding. So, the time is not important. If it would be, then we probably would not be here. And that's not related to time, but that's also related to the importance. Someone said to me recently when they asked them for a job, on a job interview, things like that, or research interview, would you do it for free? If the answer is yes, then they would employ it, because the money, time, it comes. It's just how much is rewarding.
I want to make it very clear that Deakin University's position is not that you work 24/7. In terms of in terms of time, look, we in the research office can't give you more time, but what I would say is that life's a series of trade-offs, and to be a good researcher, I'd argue that you need to be very disciplined in terms of what you're putting your time into. We all have to say no to things. I think we all, as researchers, and I'm one of them too, there's an endless list of things that we'd love to be able to do, but you can't do everything, and you need to acknowledge that. And so you make those decisions, you accept that, yes, there are things that you're really passionate about that you'll put your effort into, and there are other things that you'd love to do, but you just don't have the time or the capacity, or it doesn't fit with the home life and all of those sorts of things. What we can do in the research office is try to provide resourcing, whether that's in terms of money or in terms of the supports around grants, commercialisation, PhDs, some of the systems. You probably won't always argue that I give you a lot of time back with some of the things we make you do. But if we have those systems working as well as they possibly can, that will give time back to the researchers. And then it's about money again. I keep coming back to that. But, Science and Society Network, that's funding that flows through the university, through the research and innovation portfolio, goes out to researchers, and that doesn't give you more time. But what I've known as a researcher is that the way you increase your capacity is not by working more, you build teams. And that's what money can let you do, is it can let you, go and get a research assistant or a fellow, or it can give you an opportunity perhaps to enrol an HDR student on a scholarship. And that's how you get time. You get time through working in teams, not through working 14 hours a day. Yeah.
That's literally what the Science and Society grant did for me. It got me the time of this remarkable group of collaborators.
That's so wonderful to hear, and that is just something that we know when we see research assistants on those grant applications. We know that we're buying people some time. Thank you, hands together, for this wonderful panel.